So I want to spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about two different types of teaching techniques. The first one are classroom assessment techniques, which are techniques that allow you to know how your students are doing. The second one, low-stakes assignments, allow your students to know how they're doing from you. Okay, so those are the two categories that we're going to look at. The first one being classroom assessment techniques. Has anyone heard this term before? You probably haven't unless you've read any Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. Is this familiar to anybody in the room?
I've heard of it before.
Okay, does anyone want to take a stab at what a classroom assessment technique, what that term means? Okay, well, I'll provide the definition for you. Essentially, a classroom assessment technique is just brief classroom activities that are designed to help shape and focus subsequent teaching based on students' current understanding and ongoing learning needs. Okay, so it's just what it sounds like, essentially. You are figuring out where are the students at. What do they understand? What do they know? Where are they at? And how am I going to adjust my teaching to respond to that? And these techniques are just brief little classroom techniques that you can do that will help you gain access to that information. Because as we all know, students are not, flying into our office hours saying, let me tell you everything about how I'm doing, and this is where I'm succeeding, and this is where I'm struggling, right? So there are ways that you can start to find that out. So some characteristics of classroom assessment techniques, they're mutually beneficial. That means to you and to the students. It helps you know how your teaching's going, what you can adjust, and it helps them know, how am I doing in this class? How, am I tracking along? Are there things that I should be working on? Second to that, they are formative, as opposed to being primarily evaluative. So they are to help students get to where you want them to be. It's not necessarily about you critiquing anything that they're doing. Third to that is that they are ongoing. The activities I'm going to share with you are very brief, like I said, and don't take a lot of preparation, and they are things you could actually do every single class if you wanted to, in some way, shape, or form. And they should continue throughout the quarter so that you're constantly knowing how is the course progressing over the 10 weeks. And then finally, as Michael already pointed out, they're rooted in good teaching practice. We all say that we want to be engaged with our students. We want to know how they're doing. We want to make sure they're getting the most out of their class. But most of us don't know how to translate what we come to class prepared to do into actually meeting the students where they're at. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish. So based on those, I guess I'll leave that up there for a second. Based on those definitions and descriptors, are there things that any of you are doing in your class that you could think of that might fall under this category of classroom assessment techniques that you might share with the group as something that works well to accomplish any of these things? Yes?
I give them a quiz the second week of class. And then the third week I don't give them a quiz, and then they have a quiz on the fourth week of class. So by the time this assessment, by the time we have to, at least they have 2 grades before the midterm.
Okay. And what does that quiz tell you?
Well, it tells me if
you
they're reading the book and listening to the music, because I'm teaching a music appreciation class.
If they bought the book.
Well, I bought the book. I use what is that? McGraw-Hill, and I use Music Connect, so I know everybody who brought the book. It pops up on Connect, so and they know that I know. And yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Other ideas?
I do activities that I don't grade. But we do group activities, and they still have to submit it and turn it in, but it's not graded, and that helps me. And I walk around the classroom a lot while they're doing this, so I can take mental notes of what students are understanding and what they're not understanding, and I could adjust the next lesson accordingly, and then assignments accordingly. I'm constantly changing things. My syllabus is a living, breathing entity. And on it, I say there are maybe 6 to 8 assignments. I don't actually ever say there are this many because I like to adjust what I'm doing to whoever's in the classroom at the time.
So based on that, say those small group activities, if you're finding that every group is struggling with a particular topic, then you might take more class time to work on that.
Well, even if one person is struggling, I'm kind of anal, I guess, but I'll review it the next time, even if one person is, because it's been my observation that students don't always tell you. that they don't, and they're afraid to ask questions. And if one person asks a question, chances are everybody has the same question, or a lot of people have a question. So, yeah.
And a lot of times students don't know how to articulate that they are struggling because they don't know that they're struggling.
Or they don't
right? They might say, well, I came to class and I followed the PowerPoint and I understand, you know, they think they understand, but when they have to go then produce something.
Then they probably, I make them produce in class.
Yeah.
And ungraded activities, so they don't feel like they have to perform. They can, you know, it's not really worth much. There's not much at stake as far as the grade is concerned.
Right, which is where we're going to get to next with the low stakes assignments. Okay, well I have a list of a bunch that I'm just going to throw out at you. It's kind of tried and true classroom assessment techniques that might be of interest to you to try out in your classroom. Okay, and like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a laundry list. I'm going to run through them, and if we want to talk more about them in discussion or one-on-one, we can do that. The first one is the background knowledge probe. Okay, this is essentially just a short, usually 2 to 3 question if you're doing short answer, or up to 15 to 20 if you're doing multiple choice. Questions about students' attitudes or understanding about concepts coming into either a class, so at the beginning of the term, or into a particular class session, right? So if there's a particular topic you're going to cover. This can get at students, you know, misconceptions about a subject. I should tell you also that we're going to make all this information available to you, the slides, and we have some handouts as well. So you don't have to take too many. Yeah, but if you want to take notes, go for it.
Studies have clearly indicated that if they
you're writing it into your brain. Yep. So this can help you get at students' motivations, beliefs, values, anything that's of interest to you. There are ways that you can do this at the beginning of the term and then do it again with the same questions at the end of the term, and that helps students mark their own progress, right? You can see where they're coming in at, particularly if you're teaching an intro-level class. I was meeting with some political science faculty members last week who are teaching Intro to American Government. Their assumption is all the students have had a civics class in high school. They know the basics about, you know, the Electoral College, how the Supreme Court works, you know, these sorts of things. And they said they couldn't believe when they do these kinds of diagnostics where their students are at with that intro level. But it's very concrete information that then students can then show their progress. Likewise, if you want to see it in terms of skills, you can have students do some writing. So if it's a short answer question, you're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because you're going to hear what they know about the concept, but you're also going to get to observe their writing, to be able to see, you know, how are my students writing coming in. Okay, the second one, clear skies and muddy waters. This is essentially, sometimes you may have heard of the concept of a 1-minute paper, where at the end of class you have students write for a minute on, you know, what they learned in class that day or what was most clear to them. The clear skies, muddy waters just helps get at sort of the extreme point. So the clear skies being, what is the #1 thing that you're going to remember from class today? What do you remember? What are you taking with you? The muddy waters is, what's the thing that you're most confused about or you'd like more information about? If you have students put their names on that, then you can start to track, you know, who's really continuously struggling with this. But on the whole, looking at the aggregate, it'll also help you, wow, 2/3 of the class are really struggling with this. I need to spend some more time showing them how to cite certain work or create an outline or whatever that is. So that's something you can do every single class, you know. I mean, the drawback is students tire of it if you do too often. But, you know, you can pepper it in here and there to figure out where students are at. You can also use technology to do that. You know, you can, if you use clickers or have students with their smartphones, there are different apps that we can tell you about to have sort of gauge how the class is doing. Okay, the third, self-confidence studies, can be brief surveys that ask the students how confident they are to complete, in their ability to complete whatever the task is that you're going to be having them do. So, say it's, you know, preparing for a midterm exam. You know, how confident are you in, you know, understanding the content? How confident are you in being able to write an argumentative essay? You know, these kinds of things. Ask the students to really articulate where they're at. You can also tie that into actual assignments, where when you have a student turn in an assignment, you can ask them to say, you know, why did I have you do this assignment? You know, things like that, just to get a sense for what's going on with them. Are they understanding why we're doing what we're doing? And you know, do they feel confident to succeed in this course? The next one we've already talked about briefly is quizzes. You can build these in all ways, shapes, and forms, and you can do them as games, where you just ask the class 2 or 3 questions, then you poll the class for the answers, and you see what the distribution is of the class. You know, how are we doing on these 2 or 3 topics? So you can make it fun and lighthearted, and you only have to do usually 2 or 3 questions to get a sense for what's going on in the class. The last one here is about learning objectives. I say inquire, reinforce, and remind students about learning objectives. What I mean about this is that we often start our class, beginning of the quarter, with our syllabus, and we say, here are our objectives, this is where we're going this quarter. And then we never talk about them again. We never say, have we started to meet these and in what way? So what I encourage faculty to do is to be very explicit about everything you're doing in your class. So with individual assignments, you say, I'm having you do this assignment because, as we said at the beginning of the quarter, I want you to be able to, make an argument supported by evidence. So this is what we're doing. We're collecting resources or sources so that you can back up an argument, right? And you just are that explicit with them with each step of the way. And then you can ask them to re-articulate that to you so that they understand how what we're doing is tying into their learning in the class. And that builds some intrinsic motivation in the students too, to continue to do the work so it doesn't seem like busy work, but it's actually things that are contributing to their learning. So these are some classroom assessment techniques. I'm going to now jump to the other sort of side of this coin, which are the low stakes assignments. So if the classroom assessment techniques really help you understand what's going on, the low stakes assignments with feedback really help the students understand what's going on. Okay, so low stakes assignments, just what they sound like, they're assignments that aren't worth a lot of points. So they're the sum of recommendations we give to students for improving their work at an early stage with the expectation that they will revise it accordingly. So it involves giving feedback, right? It involves letting students know how they're doing and what they can do differently, okay? So some characteristics of low stakes assignments are that they are ungraded or that they are graded, to account for a small portion of the student's grade. Sometimes you can do this simply with a check mark for just having completed it, right? You just want to say, you have to complete this and this could be part of your participation in the class. Some professors use it as part of tracking attendance. So every day you come to class and to track the attendance, you have to answer these 3 questions on this quiz. You write your name on it, you turn it in, I know you were here. And it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. But it's not going to hurt the student's grade in the class. And the point being that you want to give the student the opportunity to learn and move towards what you're trying to get them to do before, boom, they take their midterm and it's worth 1/3 of their grade, and then they're on that track to a D or an F or whatever it is. Next, they're building blocks to what you will be assessing. So it's about breaking down larger assignments into these smaller pieces so that you're giving students the stepping stones they need to get you where you want them to go, which I'll talk a little bit more about when I show some examples. Third, I say, it reflects the professional creation process. And what I mean by that is that, in college, so often students have this experience of they turn in one product, they get a grade for it, and that's it, and they never look at it again. Right? And in real life, that is not at all what our lives look like, right? We create something, we revise it, we get feedback, we get input, we present it, regardless of what field you're in. And so sometimes when I take that angle with students, I find that they buy in a little bit more because they say, oh, you're right, this is what this is going to look like. I do have to turn in a draft of something and then work on it again and then resubmit it. Next, I like this, that it changes your role from judge to facilitator of learning, especially early on in the quarter. If you're giving your students feedback and they're not being evaluated or graded by it, they don't see you as the person who's just coming down with the hammer on the grades, right? But you're saying, I want to help you. So you're becoming this facilitator and they view your role a little bit differently. And then finally, it yields better student performance and better work products. If they've had the opportunity to hear from you, to practice what you want them to do, to play around with some ideas and materials, then what they ultimately get assessed on is going to be better. So you're going to be more satisfied and their grades will be higher as a result. So, some low stakes assignments that I'll share with you here. Essentially, they are all segments of larger assignments. So, your homework, what you would need to do, is to look at your assignments that you're assessing your students on, whether that's a midterm, whether it's a research paper, whatever that is, and to take the time to break that down into smaller pieces. What are the smaller pieces? So I can use, for instance, I teach public speaking, and I'm going to be having students do an informative speech where they have to do some research and use some outside sources to support their speech. So I break that down and I have them, they have to come one day with their topic and their thesis statement. So what is it that they're mostly going to be talking about? Then I have them come the next time with a draft of an outline. Right? So it's not just show up ready to give this speech, because then if they miss the whole part about the research and the outline, then they're totally out of luck. Whereas if I've had the opportunity to intervene at earlier points, then what they're able to do is going to be better. So that's for you to figure out and something I can help you with based on your individual assignments. Second to that would be sample exam questions. So if you use exams, most of you probably have logs of questions that you rotate in and out. Some quarters you use, some quarters you don't. I would encourage you to use some sample questions to give to your students. So if you know that you use short answer questions, you use an essay question, give students examples of those so they know what they look like, so that they're not shocked when they walk into an exam and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was going to be the format. And then last, using peer feedback. So, a lot of faculty say, I don't have time, I don't want to do more grading, but I encourage you to use your students for this type of thing. So, and the other concern I get is, well, my students aren't capable of, giving feedback to each other. So the key to that is giving very specific prompts to your students on what you're asking them to do. And I encourage faculty to start with non-evaluative questions. So it's not about judging the strength of the argument or things like that, but is there a clear statement of thesis? Do you see examples of this? They're more identifying, right? And so you're engaging students in the process, and they can turn that into you, and then you can quickly flag, oh, this student's really struggling. So you're using the students to give feedback to each other. So in all of these cases, what we're looking at is the evaluation of the process versus the product when it comes to learning, right? We're really interested in, are the students making progress? If you start to build these in, by the time you get to week 3, week 4, week 5, you're going to have enough knowledge of your students to go into that APR and check that box and say, this student, I don't really know what's going on, but something's going on, and they need somebody to talk to them. They're not tracking, they're whatever it is. So that would be what I would encourage you to do, and I have more resources on these types of things if you want to spend some time talking about how to incorporate them